Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's me Kagem. Today we're going to take you through a tour of the most exclusive luxury neighborhood in Dar, which is called Oyster Bay. Look at these houses, they're like townhouses here. And yeah, we're going to show you more about Dar and this like super high-end luxury neighborhood. This house is huge. So yeah, tell me what you think. Make sure you're fully subscribed. I have so much to show you. Okay, so one of the benefits of Oyster Bay is a deeply private neighborhood. There are lots of people here who live here who are very successful. Look at this house. This is like a mansion. Really, really beautiful. You have a lot of successful people who live here who kind of like the anonymity of this neighborhood, and I can see why, because it's very clean, it's very quiet. Oyster Bay was actually the neighborhood where the colonists, like the British colonists, used to live. They used to live here, and a lot of these original tarmac roads were actually made by them, and they haven't actually changed like since colonial times. So that's one really interesting thing about Oyster Bay. There's also this beautiful property here, very luxurious. You see these white signs. When someone's building a house, they have to like write it publicly so that people walking by know that a house is being built. So yeah, I think this part is still Oyster Bay, but it's also this other neighborhood called Masaki. So Masaki and Oyster Bay are kind of like the Mayfair and Knightsbridge of Dar es Salaam, let's say. Just a minor correction, this is actually Masaki. So Masaki and Oyster Bay, they are basically like, Masaki is the smaller luxury neighborhood, and Oyster Bay is the more exclusive part. So this is actually Masaki. Like I said, it's kind of like Mayfair and Knightsbridge, you know, in London. Like they're both very exclusive. I would say Oyster Bay is a little bit more exclusive than Masaki. Masaki has a more like luxury rustic feel, as you can see here. So like I said, the types of people that live here are lots of diplomats, you have lots of expats who live here. Property rental costs here, a lot of the houses here are like $1 million properties. You cannot live here in terms of like purchasing a property unless you have, you know, a lot of wealth. Properties here are quite expensive. So yeah, this is Masaki. See, Oyster Bay has a lot of these super beautiful roads with these trees. A lot of these trees are at least like, you know, 80 years old. Yeah, they're just so beautiful here. There's I don't know, like one of the vibes I like about this whole neighborhood is that it really does feel very high-end and very luxurious. Like I said, Oyster Bay is the most exclusive neighborhood in Dar. In terms of safety, I would say that the neighborhood is safe, but as you can see, there are people walking on the streets, but most people drive here. So most people are actually just driving and everything because it's just much safer to drive. And at the end of the day, everyone has like security guards and a lot of security as well to keep themselves safe. So anyway, if you have any questions about these neighborhoods, feel free to ask me in the comments. Make sure that you like, comment, share, and subscribe to my channel. And yeah, thank you for watching this tour, and I'll speak to you guys in a bit. Look at these beautiful trees here with the orange petals. They're so beautiful. Are they called Christmas trees? Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're actually called Christmas trees. Those trees that we've just passed, they have a name here. In Tanzania, we call them Christmas trees. So yeah, as I said, just one more final like view here of Oyster Bay. I love the trees here. The trees are so beautiful. And yeah, I just wanted to show you those. So I'll see you guys at home in a little bit. I just wanted to show you, yeah, some of the most high-end like parts of Dar, and this is the most exclusive neighborhood in Dar. Look at this house, for example. You can see all the security here. They're like, there's like electric wire, there's a gate, there's probably a bunch of security guards. A lot of the high-end luxury properties and houses in Dar are protected like that because you really do need to have a lot of security. You can also see this one right here as well, a beautiful mansion with a lot of security. There are some gentlemen sitting outside that watching our car as it's going past. So security is a big deal in this particular neighborhood. People really take it seriously. And people watch out for like new cars they haven't seen, so they probably don't know our car, they haven't seen our car before. They're probably, you know, just noticing like the license plate number on our car and everything, because they take security very seriously in these parts. This part that we're going through is the actual original part of Oyster Bay, when Tanzania was Tanganyika. This was actually the original part of it before independence, and you can really tell like how the people who live here, they take care of their properties, they take care of the road. You know, you can really get a feeling just for how high-end this is, particularly this property. You can see how well he takes care of it. It's just really beautiful. There are a lot of these like colonial style houses as well from the times when the Germans lived here. So there's a lot of German influence. There's a lot of Zanzibari style influences as well. I mean, for example, look at these. I believe these are flats, and they have like a Zanzibari style influence. So yeah, make sure that you like this video, you comment, and you tell me what you think of this tour. So you can also see in the distance there is a lighthouse. This is a very famous lighthouse. You always know you're in Oyster Bay when you see this lighthouse. So obviously we all know what lighthouses are for. That has been there for the longest period of time. I think it is also something from the colonial period as well that has just like survived over time. It's really cool. Lots of people do photo shoots and stuff. So this road here, I believe this road is called Toure Drive. And as you can see the Indian Ocean there in the distance. If you see clearly, this road has actually been worked on for a period of time. Like the government has done some works on it, and you can see the Indian Ocean there looking so beautiful. This beach here where the Indian Ocean is called Cocoa Beach. I think you can see the sand there in the distance if you look. And this is a public beach, so it's open to anyone and everyone in Tanzania. You cannot own beachland privately, as I've told you guys before. So anyway, I would love to hear what you guys have to say about all of this, and do you like these types of videos? Look at the beach there, isn't that stunning? What do you guys think about that? Okay, you guys, here are some more houses in Oyster Bay. I think these are also flats. You can see here, and there's some people walking. The weather is absolutely beautiful today. It's very, very hot. A lot of the properties here are privately owned, and if someone is renting, they're renting from like a private landlord. In our country, you don't tend to have like a lot of like landlord groups or anything like that in terms of like you know, property management groups. Let's say you tend to have people who own the properties privately. So you can see there's this one here. Some of these are offices, but most of these are residential properties. Look at this one here. This house looks absolutely stunning. This is totally a mansion. You can always tell when people take their property seriously when they have these like nice trees outside. It's really, really beautiful, so nice. So here we're in Masaki. So as I told you guys previously, a lot of the times when you're in these locations, if you're going to live here, for example, you have to actually pay rent in advance, and the way that works is that to a certain degree there's some uncertainty that landlords feel if you're going to be renting one of these high-end properties. So they want to know that you're good for the money and that you're liquid, so they will require you to pay a few months up front, and then every rent cycle is paid a few months up front, as opposed to in the West where you pay every single month. Hey guys, back home now. So I wanted to kind of put everything into context that you saw earlier on in the video. I really hope that you guys have liked this. A little bit different. I'm sitting here in the sitting room with no ring light. It's very hot today. and I'm just like so stressed out by the idea of like going into the study and setting up the acoustics for the video. So I thought I'd do something a little bit more casual. I don't know if this is gonna work. I hope this looks decent when it's all out. But yeah, so that was the tour of Oyster Bay and Masaki. Edwin kept telling me, you keep getting the neighborhoods mixed up. I was like, sorry, like we'd be driving around because I'm trying to take footage for you guys. And then, because there's a lot of there are a lot of arguments in Dar es Salaam of where Oyster Bay starts and where Masaki starts. But generally speaking, the lighthouse that you saw is like Oyster Bay, and there's this specific road like that Edwin told me is like where Masaki starts. So they're like next door to each other. So yeah, now I wanted to just kind of put some things into context. So a lot of those properties that you guys saw today are, you know, high-end luxe properties. And I think when it comes to like high-end luxury properties, like what I have realized anyway here is that a lot of people here are really kind of cloistered in their wealth. Like people here are deeply private. No one wants to like talk about like, you know, oh, this is my massive house and this is how I made all my money and stuff. This is a deeply private culture. I'm still working on getting access into someone's home to film that luxury video for you guys. I'm actually super excited about that. But finding someone who would be comfortable to show that in like who is Tanzanian and who lives here. Just culturally, people here kind of think it's a bit like you're kind of showing off. I mean, even with this channel, like this channel is an Anglophone channel, like it's in English. Like if I was doing this in Swahili, I would be dragged so hard. Okay, so anyway, so the first thing I wanted to talk to you guys about today is security. So as you saw, all of those mansions that we showed you in Oyster Bay, I'm just driving through, a lot of them have tons and tons and tons and tons of security. By security, what I mean is a lot of those properties in Oyster Bay and Masaki will have like guard dogs. So maybe each property probably has dogs who are out at night, maybe like German Shepherds or Dobermans, something like that. And then there'll be physical security guards. So they'll have security guards who are in the property during the day. And then they'll have nighttime security guards. They tend to do shifts of like 12 hours. So 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. And then the nighttime person comes at 6 p.m. until, you know, 6 a.m. So maybe those like huge mansions, they'll tend to have like 2 security guards because they need to have 2 just in case something happens. So let's say in general, each property will have about 4 security guards who are like taking care of the property between night and day. And then in addition to that, it depends on the owner of the property or the person who's renting the property. Some of those people will have, you know, inside their property, they'll have panic buttons, they'll have panic rooms, you know, they'll have like, maybe like, you know, what are they called? You know, like in movies, those like invisible doors or whatever, like that are in walls. Some houses have that here, but definitely panic buttons are a huge thing here. So obviously, I'm sure most of you know, but like just really quickly, the way panic buttons work in Dar is that let's say you're in the house and someone breaks into your house, you have panic buttons in your home so that, you know, you can let people know, like let the security company know that that, you know, people have come into your house so that they can come and, you know, help you. Most of those houses in the Oyster Bay, absolutely 100%, they will be outsourcing the security to a security company. So those security guards, it's not like they're going to be walking around with their CV. They will be hired through the security company, and the security company will send an invoice every month. It's quite pricey. It's not as affordable as what people think. And I think there is a feeling here like you might as well just pay, you know, for the peace of mind so that you are safe, because safety is the most important thing. It's really interesting when we were driving around because Edwin was like, wow, the walls, you know, and we both never realized this, but he was like, wow, the walls of a lot of people's properties are so incredibly high compared to other neighborhoods in Dar. And that's because of the need for privacy, just because there's so many people who live there who are, you know, extraordinarily wealthy, but you also have people who are very powerful. So you have lots of ambassadors of different countries live in that neighborhood. You have diplomats in general, you've got high-ranking politicians, you've got entrepreneurs, business people. In terms of the business people who live there, it tends to be people who've made money in like manufacturing,
people who've made money in retail and things like that. And it tends to be people who made a lot of money in the 90s, and now their kids are kind of growing up in this wealth. So, in Europe, you have like old money and new money. We don't really have that here for obvious historical reasons, but there's definitely like a class of young people coming up who grew up rich, basically. So who grew up like going to school in South Africa, going to school in Canada, going to school in the UK, or going to school in Belgium, wherever, Switzerland. And then they come home like for like holidays, whatever, and then now they're like maybe looking for a job, or they're working in the family business or something like that. So there are a lot of those types of people. So that's like the situation with security. So another thing that a lot of those like high-end luxury properties in Oyster Bay have, and there's no way that they don't have this, is every single one of those properties will have a housekeeper. 100%. No one is running that property on their own, cleaning the whole property on their own. And you don't need to live in Oyster Bay to have a housekeeper. Many people in Dar es Salaam who are from affluent backgrounds absolutely have a housekeeper. So we have a housekeeper as well, and she helps a lot. So in the case of like the Oyster Bay and Masaki properties, they probably have a housekeeper. The housekeeper probably does like, a lot of the cooking for the family, or whomever's living inside the property. Obviously, keeping the house clean, making sure that the house has everything it needs, making sure that the family who's living inside that property has everything that they need, okay, as well. And in addition to a housekeeper, a lot of those properties have caretakers. So that person is like the caretaker for the whole property on the outside. That person will never enter the property either, but they'll just like make sure that the grounds are kept well. They'll make sure that everything's gardened. They'll make sure that, everything like in terms of the house itself is working and doing well. If those houses, if those houses have like guard dogs, and they're not rented from the security company, because that's something that people here do, is like maybe someone doesn't have dogs but they rent them from the security company, then the caretaker will be taking care of those dogs as well, and making sure that they're happy, whatever, they have all the food that they need, and they're good to go. So that's like the housekeeper and the caretaker, okay? Now, in some of those like huge mansions, some of them will have like a smaller house in the back of the property for the housekeeper or the caretaker to sleep in. Although I must say that's kind of falling out of favor now. Like a lot of people now, what people prefer to do, and this is what I have done with my house, is that my housekeeper, like, or our housekeeper, like, she doesn't sleep on the property. So she goes home, she has her own crib, she's got her own life. It's nice to kind of have that kind of separation, you have that privacy, because the next thing we're going to talk about is what happens if something bad happens and, bandits, because I can't say the T word on YouTube, come onto the property. Those types of things happen, and they happen everywhere. So let's say like that happens here. Someone tries to like enter one of those like luxurious homes that we just looked at and tries to steal from them, or tries to do a break-in. A lot of the time, literally 99% of the time, it is not someone who doesn't know that person. It's someone who knows that person, okay, knows where they live, knows the blueprint of that property, and knows the way that house looks inside out. That's why I always tell you guys, like, for me, like, I can't show like the insides of my house and everything, and even like little things like showing the garden and showing you guys my dogs, like, you end up like giving away so much info. So a lot of those types of situations where bandits come and do break-ins, they tend to be inside jobs. They happen in Oyster Bay from time to time, but they're incredibly rare. And literally, when they happen, when the police get involved and capture the people who did it, most of the time it's like the housekeeper or the caretaker colluded with people who then came to, cause harm. It literally will never be someone driving past saying, oh, I want to get into that house and, try and rob that house. Like, that is not going to happen at all, because it's just, you literally need to know how the insides of that house are. That's why there's just so much security here with a lot of these like high-end mansions, guard dogs, security guards, like lots of computer surveillance, like CCTV and all of that, because like if you don't have that, you just kind of end up becoming like a sitting duck for people who, want what you have. We've talked about it before, particularly in this age at the moment with C19. There are a lot of people who have immense wealth, and there are a lot of people who've lost everything. If they see you, talking about stuff on the internet, and showing off all of that you have. If you're going to do that, you need to have security. Like, security to me is like a luxury item. I just don't talk about it on the channel, and I finally had the opportunity now to talk about it with you guys. But security is a massive deal, and security is incredibly important here. Okay, so now let's talk about other things like swimming pools. Do lots of those houses have pools? A few of them probably do have pools. There's also this other neighborhood called Mbezi. Mbezi is a desirable neighborhood if it's close to the beach. It's called Mbezi Beach. It's also quite desirable. There are a lot of massive mansions there, like massive mansions there, with pools and things like that. There are lots of people who have pools as well in Oyster Bay, Masaki. Pools require a lot of maintenance, but there's definitely a market for that here for sure. And there are people who do own homes with pools for sure. Let's talk about rent for a lot of these luxury homes here in Dar. Like, how does rent work, or how does home ownership work? First of all, the majority of people here don't buy houses. People buy plots of land and then build their dream home. That's number one. Number two, if someone does buy a property and decides to do a refurb or renovate the whole property, refurbish the whole property, what they'll do is they'll buy in a very desirable neighborhood, they'll refurbish the property, and then some people just instantly put the house on the market so that they can gain some quick money, whatever. But home ownership here is rising, but home ownership in those like desirable locations like Oyster Bay and Masaki tends to be through inheritances. So again, it tends to be like the super rich who are passing on their wealth to their heirs, so to the younger generation. So the people who made money in Tanzania in the 80s and 90s after Tanzania was independent for a few decades, whatever, those are the people who own properties in Oyster Bay. And then maybe they'll decide, okay, when I pass on, I'm going to leave this house in Oyster Bay, to my son or to my daughter, and then that can be theirs. That is actually the scene in Oyster Bay. But there are deals to be had. Those of you who are into property, and if you're in Tanzania, you're like, okay, well, I'm interested. Maybe one day I'd like to buy a house in Oyster Bay, and you don't want to deal with the stress of like building your own house because that's so stressful. How much would a property in Oyster Bay be going for, give or take? A house that's close to Cocoa Beach, and you've already seen Cocoa Beach where the Indian Ocean is. A house that's close to Cocoa Beach, like maybe a 5-minute walk from Cocoa Beach or a 5-minute drive from Cocoa Beach, that is going to require something between, like, let's say $2.5 million to $4 million. A house that has a pool, that maybe has 4 to 5 bedrooms, and it's in the very leafy luxe parts of Oyster Bay. Oyster Bay itself is very high-end and very luxurious, but there's some parts that are even more luxurious than others. That kind of property is going to be like a $5 million property. And that's like, we're talking about US dollars here, okay? So I think sometimes when people think of Africa, they're like, yeah, I'm going to go buy a house in Africa and it's going to be really cheap. Good luck with that. It really depends on the location. But if you want to go for a high-end, luxe residential house in Oyster Bay, you're looking at starting 2.5 million US dollars, and that's just to purchase a property. There are going to be government taxes that need to be paid. There are lots of property taxes that you have to pay as well. Also here, you have to pay the estate agent a portion of the fee. Sometimes estate agents here charge money to take you onto listings. We have an estate agent that we use for a lot of our business dealings, like when we're looking for office space or whatever, but he doesn't charge Edwin and I, but that's because we have like a great relationship with him and we've given him a lot of business, throughout the years. In terms of renting, you might be curious, like, okay, well, how much will rent be and how much will rent, cost me and whatnot. So in terms of rent, I would say rent is more like for Oyster Bay, like a residential house in Oyster Bay, we're talking 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's some houses there that go for 10,000 US dollars a month because of the area, because it is the most exclusive area. But Oyster Bay itself, 5,000. Masaki, 3 to 4,000. And also Masaki, there are a lot of flats. So getting like a small cottage in Masaki, there are these like cottages in Masaki, but getting those is hard. Those are not easy to get because once they come into the market, people just want to keep them and just want to live there forever because they know how hard that they are to get. So that is like purchasing a property, and that's like renting it out. Definitely here, flats are not seen as, they're not as desirable as a residential house. Like if we're talking about luxury, like the way in London and Paris, like everyone lives in flats. Like, you know, everyone lives in a flat, and flats depending on the area. Like a flat in Knightsbridge or a flat in Kensington or Mayfair or Belgravia, that would be, you know, you're a top dog. But here, I don't think that flats are seen as the same way. Like irrespective of the location of the flat, people, even in our culture, there isn't a Swahili word for flat. The word in Swahili for a house is nyumba. Okay, so people would be like, okay, so you live in a flat. Okay, fair enough. But what we are seeing more of now, there are more flats coming onto the scene as more people are becoming more comfortable with living in flats here. But we're also seeing like villas. So someone will create like a gated complex full of like little small villas, and then you just live in the villa. So it's like your house, but you live on a, you know, gated complex, and you'll be paying like a security fee for that. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it in terms of how the like high-end like luxe community here lives in terms of properties and things like that. I hope that's explained things quite well. I think some of you might be curious about like cost of living. I feel like cost of living on the high side, like let's say you are living in Oyster Bay, you're paying for a rental property there, you have a housekeeper, you have a caretaker, you have a driver. That's another thing. A lot of people here who are affluent have drivers. It's so stressful driving in Dar. Don't let anyone fool you, honey. Okay, driving in African cities is not a joke. We have a driver as well. Like, if you have a driver as well, you've got security at your home, you've got dogs. Don't forget, like, your dogs need to eat. All of the food for Cairo and Fox is imported from Germany, honey. Okay, so we need to go to the vet and pay for that as well. You know, you have to pay for your, you know, you have to take care of your animals. I think pertaining to animals, just super quick before I go back to the other point, is like here animals are not seen as pets. They're seen as like livestock, if that makes sense. And by that, what I mean is people don't like that animals don't live in the inside of the property. Like Fox and Cairo have kennels where we live here, like on our property. They have like their own living space outside. But Fox and Cairo definitely like helped, because so with them, they're guard dogs, but essentially their job is to warn us if something is happening so that we have time to call the security company. That's one reason why many people here have dogs. And if you have dogs, it's really good, particularly if you're like a single woman and you live here. It's probably worth getting a dog, to be honest, like a German Shepherd or a Doberman, like a dog that looks quite scary, because Tanzania is not a culture that respects dogs. People don't really like them. People think that they're unclean, and people don't, to be honest, people don't really like them, to be honest with you. So if people see you walking with like a dog or something, they're like, this person means business. I'm not trying to take anything from this girl. She got this big scary dog and she's walking around with it. I have noticed there are like a lot of single women who have been moving to Tanzania, and I have noticed like when a woman is like running on her own, and I do this as well when I go jogging, just go jogging with your dog. When you do that, no one will bother you. Men will not harass you and ask you questions and things like that, because here people are afraid of dogs, and people don't see them as like, oh, cute little fluffy animals the way they do in the West. People see them as, wow, that's a dog that could come and attack me. So that's just a quick comment about the dogs. But for example, our dogs, the food that is imported, that we get from the vet, comes from Germany. It's really expensive, and Cairo has to go to the vet often because he's a younger puppy at the moment. So if you put all of those costs together, plus your cost of living, your needs, your requirements, I would say you could live let's say excluding like the rental property of where you're living, I would say between $5,000 to $7,000 a month would cover a very like affluent lifestyle here. Not like a super rich lifestyle, an affluent lifestyle, excluding rent. Don't forget, rent would be like a big chunk of what you'd end up spending. So yeah, I hope that you found this video interesting. It's a little bit different. What do you guys think of these types of videos? If you have any questions, feel free to ask me. I hope that I've explained things in a way that's interesting. As you can see, Tanzania is not cheap, honey. Okay, it's not super expensive, but it is expensive in the light of what you get here. A lot of foreigners who come to work here or who come here for projects are actually struck by how expensive Tanzania is. They think that, oh, I'm coming to an African country. African countries will be super cheap. And what's actually happened is a lot of African countries like Tanzania, Botswana, South Africa. They've become these kind of like oases of luxury, and they've become these kind of high-end luxury resorts. I mean, going on a safari can easily cost you like $10,000 for two people or $8,000 for two people, like in Tanzania. It's not as cheap as people think. Okay guys, thank you so much for watching. I really hope that you're fully subscribed, that you've liked this video. If you have any questions, ask me. And yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys very soon in my next video.